Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Biollywood Podcast, where we explore biological threats in pop culture and what they teach us about real-world biodefense. I'm J.T. O'Brien, Associate Director of Research at the Bipartisan Commission on Biodefense at the Atlantic Council, which is part of the Scowcroft Center for Strategy and Security. I'm joined by our Director, Dr. Asha M. George.
Hello.
And our Associate Director of Government Relations and Policy, Rob Bradley.
Hello there.
Today we are discussing NCIS Origins Season 2, Episode 3, which is titled The Edge, and it aired on October 28th, 2025. Today is a very special episode for two reasons. First, our very own director, Dr. Asha M. George, served as a technical consultant on this specific episode, helping to ground the forensic and threat science in reality. Mm-hmm. And second, we are very, very honored to be joined by a special guest, Patrick Cady, who is the director of the episode that we are discussing today. Patrick is an Emmy-nominated cinematographer-turned-director, known for his visual storytelling on acclaimed series like Bosch and Insecure. His career began with working with legendary filmmaker John Sayles on films like The Passion Fish and Sunshine State. And his cinematography credits include the Sundance Grand Jury Prize winner for Girlfight. And as director, he helmed pivotal episodes of Rectify, Interrogation, and the series finale of Bosch.
Excellent. Welcome, Patrick.
Thank you very much for having me on the big screen.
Yes.
Thanks for joining us.
Of course.
So, spoiler alert, this discussion will contain full spoilers for that NCIS Origins episode. So if you haven't seen it yet, we highly recommend you do before continuing with this podcast. So a little bit about the context and premise of this episode. NCIS Origins is a prequel series to NCIS, and it is set in 1991. And at this time, the agency was known as the Naval Investigative Service, which is NIS, and it was renamed to the NCIS, or Naval Criminal Investigative Service, later in the 1990s. The episode serves as a very pivotal origin story for Dr. Donald Maller's relationship with Gibbs, and tackles a literal cold case featuring a whistleblower who was found frozen solid to preserve evidence of a deadly toxin, poison, chemical weapon. And that's kind of the background for this episode. So I kind of want to jump right in and, kind of start, with Asha and Patrick about how, you two kind of met, got in touch with each other, how this kind of process all folded out with you being a technical consultant on the show, and how that framed, Patrick, your kind of work as director and cinematographer on this.
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is this is our first time meeting, Asha and I, because she worked, I think, with Margarita, right? That's
yes.
Who you worked with, was the writer of the episode. Mm-hmm. And we were just talking about how television's really a writer's medium. The directors are brought in as guests, whereas the showrunners, in this case, Gina and David, are the ones who are overseeing the entire show. And then Margarita is also a producer on the show. And I just happened to get lucky to get assigned this pretty fantastic episode because of bringing in the character of Ducky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the way it worked for me is I serve on the Science and Security Board for the Bulletin of the Atomic Scientists. And there are various entities in the country that try and help filmmakers, directors, and so forth, writers, connect with scientists to inform what they're writing or check what they're writing and check what they're trying to accomplish, to make sure that they're not, unless they really want to be, that they're not doing something that's so unrealistic that everybody, or at least everybody in the community, the scientific community, goes, oh, that's so wrong. And, the reason that, certainly all of us watch these things, the reason is you don't want to put out a really great episode and then have everybody say, wow, it's so sucky in terms of content, and why didn't they take the time to at least talk to somebody? You don't want that. It doesn't have to be 100%, scientifically accurate for every beat of the entire story, but you do want some understanding of what the community thinks, and then it gives the writers an opportunity to say, well, is it realistic could we do it this way? How would you do it? What do you think? How do you think something would unfold? So I'm connected with the University of Southern California's program in this area, and occasionally they call me and say, hey, so-and-so's doing such and such thing with this episode. Are you interested in talking with them? So that's how I got connected. And then for this particular episode, it wasn't just the writer I spoke to, it was the entire writer's room. It was a whole huge group of people all asking questions. I'll say that it's the first time since testifying that I've had that many people coming at me with all these different questions, and there's a lot of energy about it. We talked about everything from vaccines to what happens with toxins and what's the difference between a chemically derived toxin and a biologically derived toxin and what happens in the body and all of that. But I'll also say they didn't realize that I watch all the NCIS shows. So we got into this thing where somebody said something and I said, no, Gibbs would never do that. Gibbs would do this. And then there was another part, he was involved in Desert Storm. That character was. Mm-hmm. And so I'm a Desert Storm veteran. And so we started going down that path as well. I know. And in fact, I worked with not NCIS, but the Army's version. And I was sitting there going, no, CID, CID would come in and do it this way. I was an intelligence officer. We would attack something, investigate something in this other way. So it was really a lot of fun for them. At one point, I think Margarita, actually, the writer, said, "I just love that you know the show and you know about Gibbs, and then I think it makes it easier for them." But as I would just end by saying, obviously, I'm not going to be able to watch every single thing that we get asked about to that same extent. I think I've seen all of the episodes of NCIS. Maybe not every version in every city and every place that we're doing NCIS. But, any opportunity to watch Mark Harmon do something is worth it to me. And that cast really, I think, did a great job of starting the series, but then also I think the very fact that we can go now backwards in time to look at Gibbs's own origin story speaks volumes for how good a job that cast did. It doesn't feel like this whole separate thing about some separate person. And the directors have something kind of to go off of. Not that I should be commenting on the director's role here, but that's how it happened with me. Now, JT, you asked me earlier, or you mentioned earlier about the script. Yeah. I have never gotten a script from anybody's television show, and I don't necessarily need one. The way it works instead is they have either written or are in the middle of writing a script. And they will ask me very, very specific targeted questions about, is something practical? What would it take? And then we have had some chats and arguments about, okay, that is not realistic. Mm-hmm. I'm saying it's not realistic, and they're having to say, well, that's true, but we cannot cover up the face of the star of the show. And I'm saying, but they would die. They need the personal protective equipment. And they're saying, and we understand, but we cannot do that. So, I'm wondering Patrick, how do you square that? I mean, I know it's important to see the face, but at the same time, or some of those, similar things, how do you deal with that when you have, like if in this case, in this episode, if it had turned out that you had thawed the body as happens, but then imagine a case in which the body in real life would exude the gas. Yeah. And but yet you have to make sure that you can see the cast.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because, I feel like my job is often to ask the writers all the questions I think the actors are going to ask me, because really good actors, and this show is full of them, have a take, and since I am the guest and I didn't direct any episodes in season one, I just came. This is my very first episode on the show, and in the NCIS universe, hopefully there's many more to come. I just finished a day of shooting on episode 10 for this season. But it's the cast might, they have such a longer time with that character than you do as the director, and they're doing things to make that character their own. And you have to come to the writers when you read the script. If something strikes you as odd, like in the case of, if there had been a case where a body was off-gassing something and suddenly people just rush into the room, you would need a ticking clock so loud that they would put themselves in danger, or something like the audience knows this is a problem, but the character doesn't. That kind of thing. Like you would need, and I feel like it would be my job as the first audience member to that script, to point those things out and say, like, beyond the scientific community, anyone watching is going to go, well, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because that's really the first wave I'm looking out for, is the general audience. And I'm never assuming I'm smarter than the audience. If it bumps me, I assume it's going to bump the audience.
That's a great point. And I'm curious, do you have the writers ever kind of taken a note from you like that and gone back and tweaked the script at all, or updated it to reflect that perspective?
I mean, in this particular show, it wasn't really an issue. In other episodes of other shows, I worked a lot on Bosch, and the fun thing that would happen there is we would often have action sequences written for a space that had yet to be found, and then you find the space, you go there, and I have a long-standing relationship with the writers on that show because I was the cinematographer on it and then transitioned to directing. And so, like, we had a shootout in a parking garage that was different slightly than written, but what you do is you go there, you work it out with your team. Then I would give them very dry bullet points of what I think the action would be and why, and how you could, any good sequence, especially on a TV show where you don't have the budget to you're not going to compete with a car chase from Ronin on a TV show. It's just not going to happen. So you have to keep everything really connected to the characters and keep the stakes high for the characters, so the audience is still feeling that adrenaline rush. And then maybe there might be one or two shots that are really expressive or really make you jump or really make you feel like they're being spied on. But you have to really keep everything related to the characters, and the characters, there's this adage of for a good story, you chase the main character up the tree, then you chase them further up the tree. Like, you think they're in trouble and then you just make it worse and then see how they get out. And so sometimes the realities of your schedule or your location, you might go back to the writers and say, does this track for you? And you describe it. And then there have been some instances where I've written very dry. You don't want to step into the pool of the creative writing, but very dry plot points of, like, okay, this is going to happen, then this will happen, then this will happen. And then they translate that back to the script so that when the actors get the script, it matches what's going on, what we're going to shoot.
That's really insightful. You mentioned in your response to Asha's question that you were kind of coming onto this set with NCIS Origins, where this universe has existed for a while. This was your first episode. These characters existed for a while, and it's doubly complicated because the actor who played Ducky had previously played the younger version of Ducky on the original show. So he's coming into this with years and years of kind of being in that headspace. How was it navigating that, as opposed to Bosch, which sounds like you'd been steeped kind of with the writers, with the actors, you were more familiar with that environment, kind of being airdropped into this, at this point, in my opinion, storied franchise, and having to kind of get yourself familiar with that universe and direct it. How was that, especially with the navigating the actors?
Oh, I mean, Adam Campbell, who played the flashback version of Ducky in the original show, and the rest of the cast, they're really fantastic. That cast is really wonderful. And then, giving tribute to David McCallum, who has passed away. It was exciting that we were going to get rights to use his songs in the episode. So for homework, I went back and rewatched all of the episodes that Adam as young Ducky were in the main show, just so I would see how he had been playing playing him, so that when I was prepping, I was kind of getting myself mentally prepared for how I thought he might approach the part. And then, the great thing about working with wonderful actors is a lot of your job is really minor. I feel like the way I've described, especially making the transition to directing from shooting, is an actor is like a rock climber going up a rock wall. And the script, and there's a thing called a tone meeting that you have with the creators of the show before you start shooting, and you go through every scene and you ask real practical questions, but you also ask these emotional questions like, okay, well, even though this scene is mostly these two people talking, it's really about the third person who's listening. It could be something like that. So that you, in the heat of battle, of having to make a complicated day, of shooting everything out of order, you go back to your notes from that session, and you'll know kind of which route you want that person to take, or all the people in a big scene, where the points they all should be hitting based on the showrunner's desires. So what you'll do is and then there's the physicality of like, how are they going to walk around the room, and how are we going to photograph that where it looks interesting and doesn't take us longer than it should. And so that combination of how do you do it efficiently and still make it interesting. In the beginning of this episode, how do you hit that moment where we take David's actual hat from NCIS and put it on Adam's head in a nice shot. So I'm thinking about those things, and then I'm thinking about performance, but I'll usually give as few notes as I can, see what the actor is bringing. And then I always feel it's like to go back to the rock wall, if they're a little off the route, I just want to give one sentence to one person that puts their toe hold in exactly the right place for the little bit they're missing, if that analogy tracks. No, that makes sense. So and that's what's so exciting about directing is working with actors and responding to the emotional way they're taking the text. And then you might be in a scene, like let's say I have a scene with, you and Asha, and I'm on Asha, but I want her to respond like angrily to you. I might give you a note to be a pain in the ass to her. And then just as a good actor reacting, she'll then give the difference in performance. So it's really fun.
Gotcha.
Fun job.
What a far-fetched scenario that is.
Sure. Before we move off of this, I do want to say I felt some extra pressure on your behalf and on behalf of the whole cast, because this was a huge opportunity, not just to honor David McCallum, because you could have just flashed up the obligatory in memoriam for, at the end. There are people in this country who remember watching Man from U.N.C.L.E. in the first place, and they remember David as a young person, and not just how he looked, but how he behaved. If you then came in and sort of just told this guy, Adam, just decides to do some random stuff because it's good for the episode, you would have had so many people who would have been, upset and just not happy with it at all. So I thought, going into this, even just watching it, I thought, man, I was just nervous. How is it going to come out? And to come out of it and watch the whole thing and come to the very end and think, everybody did a really good job with it. I actually felt touched, which has nothing to do with Biodefense, I know, but I did, because I remember those shows, and I remember how his body of work is just three-dimensional with the music and the acting and the this and the that. It's become such an important thing. So I really appreciate it. And like I said, I felt for you. That's a lot of responsibility to carry.
That's how it felt. It felt like, it was such a well-written episode, and the script was really strong. Margarita's script was really strong, and certainly Gina and David, with their past experience with NCIS, they know what it should be. And so it's completely mine to screw up. Like, no pressure.
Never.
But on the page, it's pretty fantastic. In the cast read through that we did a day or two before we actually started shooting, it was fantastic. So then it's like, okay, well, now I just have to like not screw it up and do the little embellishments that make sense and stay away from everything else. And so I was really, you can even hear Mark's voice at the last voiceover has emotion in it because everyone who met David was so affected by him. So I think I'm happy with how it came out.
I'm glad you're happy. I really am.
Thank
God. I would say too, it's important to us. One of the things we look at when we're watching these TV shows and movies is the credibility of the actor carrying something forward when we're talking about the science. And it's particularly important, I think, when you're talking about a medical professional, because we in this country know so much more about medicine than we ought to, that if you see somebody do something really just ridiculous that everybody knows no doctor would ever do, that's bad. We also have too many shows that have medical examiners in them. So now everybody's an expert on medical examination. But it's not just the actor trying to do something. It is the responsibility of the director if the director's telling them to do something just off the wall. I thought that the way Adam performed and the way he was directed by Patrick was really well done, especially considering we also have all of those other episodes of NCIS with David, portraying a really good medical examiner. What did you guys think in terms of the credibility?
I thought it came across extremely well in terms of the credibility, and I think everybody seemed to be responding properly in their proper roles. There weren't any like technical terms that were stumbled over. I know sometimes that's something that we notice with actors if where a technical term will be mispronounced or something like that. None of that in this episode. And I know it was chemical weapon, but I think the overall plot and the way that it was portrayed does have a lot of overlap with bioforensics and things like that. So I think the freezing of the body, we see that all the time with ancient viruses, for example, that have been frozen in permafrost for 40,000 years up in the Arctic or Antarctic. And we were talking about The Thing a little bit before this.
Yeah.
But that's the premise for that is that cryopreservation.
Leave it in the cold. What are you doing? Don't take that thing out. Don't thaw that thing out.
What did you guys think, though, about, in this episode, they intentionally thaw the body out because they think they need to, to do the Emmy's job. They have to. And then they get to that point where Ducky says, "Oh no, I've destroyed the evidence." What did you think about that? And JT, do you think that it was realistic to think that the evidence, quote unquote, disappeared?
Yeah, absolutely. Thawing any biological material is an extremely difficult process that you have to undertake carefully to preserve the sample. If you do it too quick, the sample gets destroyed. You do it too slow, the sample gets destroyed. So putting emphasis on that, I think like that was really cool because that is realistic. Even when we're pulling things out of permafrost, we have to be very careful about the thawing methods, because if you thaw it too quickly, those crystalline structures that are created by freezing will just break rather than going back to their original form if you thaw it too quickly. If you imagine thawing a piece of ice super fast, it's just going to kind of disintegrate.
Right.
But as opposed to it being over a longer period of time where you can kind of retain some of the original characteristics of whatever it is you're thawing. So I think that was a super cool component, and I think that was really great to emphasize.
Well, and I think it's interesting that, this show takes place in, 1991, I believe?
Yes, 1991.
And so I wouldn't necessarily blame a criminal investigation for not immediately, seeing a body in a freezer and not immediately assuming it's a chemical or biological agent. Now, of course, going in to watch this, as soon as I saw the body, I said, "Oh no, why don't you have PPE on? Put her back in the freezer until you know what you're dealing with." But
back in the freezer.
But obviously, any law enforcement investigating that scene isn't immediately assuming that it's a Siberni threat. And
we've had that happen in real life, where law enforcement will take biological samples and put them in a paper bag.
Exactly.
And send them off to forensics, and then forensics is like, "I don't know what to do with this because you put it in a paper bag."
Yeah. Or even with antiquities smuggling.
Mm-hmm.
The federal law enforcement agents are there with some museum person, right? They found something, somebody's stolen or smuggling something, and they just take out a crowbar and they're just opening stuff and peering in. And after COVID, they might have the surgical mask, but that's it. And here we are concerned that smallpox has gotten into a mummy and the mummy has decomposed, and so it's not unrealistic.
Exactly.
I agree with you.
Exactly.
Even now, it's not unrealistic.
So as much as I felt terror as soon as I saw the body there, for the people in the room, it was completely realistic in my mind that would be how a criminal investigation would proceed, and that your focus would be on thawing the body out to determine COD.
Yeah.
And I think Ducky, Patrick playing Ducky, the actor playing Ducky did exactly kind of what I would expect from someone in that position. And frankly, kudos to them for figuring out as quickly as they did that it was a nerve agent as soon as they thawed the body, because that, I think that demonstrates kind of the higher end of aptitude in those scenarios. Might have taken longer under other circumstances.
What about the porcelain tooth? How do we feel about the tooth?
This is what I'm super curious
So I don't know if the tooth would have been sufficient to preserve it, but it's a clever. That's the only thing that I could think that would, in that situation,
that a regular human would have in them.
Like I don't see any other way she could have preserved it better.
Well, I think,
I don't know if, and again, I don't know if the porcelain tooth would work.
Right.
But if something works, it would be along those lines.
I personally thought it was better to do something like that than to have. We've seen so many things where the person who's been affected conveniently has a vial
of
whatever it is in their hands, and then somebody comes along and goes, "What halfway
this?
Through, what's in her hand?"
We should run some tests on it.
Yeah.
I think that like tying it to the porcelain tooth made it plausible.
Yes.
And it made it believable. And I don't think the average, like even myself as a scientist, I'm thinking, is that possible? Is it not?
Yeah, I had to go look it up.
Yeah.
I had to go look it up. But I also thought, what I thought was cool about it is we do have an understanding that porcelain is porous, right? So you can at least imagine that something could get into it. And then, not sure about the chemistry and the freezing, but maybe that has something to do. So it was plausible enough not to make you stop and go, ugh.
Yeah.
Got to change the channel, or this isn't a thing.
It's at least somewhat grounded in reality compared to what we see in the more fantastical side on some other shows that purport to be grounded in reality.
What did you think about it, Patrick?
Well, it's exactly like, it's the exact question I was so curious about speaking to all of you, was like, because, it was I felt like the only thing that might help that it would work is the sense that they're in this refrigerated container that it would keep refrigerated or very cold. And we did have a discussion in prep about the temperature it would be at and if you would need to have steam coming out of their mouths.
Interesting.
And then the problem is, like, even if we want to have steam coming out of their mouths, now it's going to make like hundreds of shots be either CG or the actors are going to have to do like Dr. Zhivago and wear little cages with chips of dry ice and then like nothing, or you're going to have to drop the temperature and work in a place.
Yeah.
But that thing is so small, we built an interior set where we could pull walls of it off so we could get cameras in there and stuff. And so we decided to, that it made, and it makes, I guess, ME sense that it would be cold, but not, they need to thaw it out so it wouldn't be so cold that you'd see your breath. And And so then the only thing you're counting on, which is a common push to get past something like this, is accelerate that action. But it's interesting because in the scene, there's this emotional moment before the realization that this could be there, and that is time, right? So you have to hope that it works well enough purely on a script point, because I can't have him, we can't have him have the idea looking at the computer and seeing the data and realizing what's going on with what killed her, and just rushing and having the answer there, because it's much more emotional and it's a better scene for the character of Ducky to feel he's completely failed and then have the idea in the moment and have planted it in passing, but strongly enough that when it comes back up, the audience isn't like, wait, he never mentioned the tooth before, and he does.
Yeah.
But like those little, like that you planted the breadcrumb early enough, did you plant it well enough? And then, but it is the exact thing I was so curious to talk to you about, because I was just now listening to you. I was like, oh, so yeah, like it can't be a pin in her leg or something that wouldn't be porous and wouldn't absorb it, right? Like, it's interesting. It's
and
an
it would
interesting
never
problem.
have gone into the filling. A filling is metal or something, right? So why would it absorb that? But Patrick, I think in this, if I'm not mistaken, in this episode, we don't find out what the agent is. We just know it's a nerve agent, correct?
Correct. There's no, we know that it's a part A, part B equals, there's that comedic bit with the scientists.
Which I think is grounded in reality, because when Kim Jong-nam, Kim Jong-un's brother, was assassinated with the nerve agent, it was a part A and part B.
This is exactly what we talked about on set. Because we were ready, like in prep, we were ready if someone in the cast was like, yeah, wait a minute, that could happen. There were actually these historic.
So Patrick, did you put a name to it? Do you know what it is?
No. It can. I am such a fan of the what's it that isn't answered. Like
some Lovecraftian kind of horror, like you don't know what it is.
And going all the way back to Kiss Me Deadly is one of my favorite crazy pants noirs. And there's this nuclear box that in one cut of the film it might be destroying the planet, and the other it's burning a house down. And,
sure. Yeah. Well, the reason I'm asking is if it was a nerve agents, it takes very, very little to kill lots of people. We talk about milligrams of agents. Yeah. Now, this is different because that's the case with biological. It's not necessarily the case with all chemical. And we've got it coming out of a tooth and, all of that. But I wondered from a protection perspective, if we got to this point and Ducky says, this is what I think it is, I think it's realistic that, look, an Emmy might come to this point, but now what happens? Are we going to have to decontaminate the entire NCIS building? Do we have to shut it all down? Or do we just have to do something with the tooth? So I'm not ragging on the fact that not a lot changed in the TV episode, because frankly, I don't know that anybody would know. But I did wonder about it. Now that we've literally and physically extracted the tooth and we've examined it and we've decided it contains something, what are we doing with it then? And what are we doing about, how would we know how much came out? And is it on a surface somewhere? How are we deconning people?
I would say the only interesting thing that in the script helps out is the idea that it gets destroyed by a certain temperature.
Yeah.
That's room temperature. So that's kind of why I felt like it's okay for Kyle Gibbs, for Austin to be holding it in the end in a petri dish, because it's
inert
room temp, and we know, because we have the roadmap to how it was built. The scientists have the roadmap to how it was built because of the files. Then I feel like it's just reassuring the audience that if Ducky hadn't thought as quickly as he had, there'd be no way to figure out how she was killed.
Was that a
Because
deliberate decision then to have it kind of be destroyed at room temp so that you wouldn't have to reckon with some of the questions that people might have had
That's
about
interesting.
Eco?
I don't know if Margarita thought of the advantage, if the writers thought of the advantage of that, because, it is that procedural episode thing that's very tricky to always pull off realistically. Is, we're being misled in one direction, and then you find out that the killer is someone else, and then boom, end credits, right? Like it's race to solve the crime, and then solve the crime, some kind of interpersonal thing with the characters that's going to keep going for the next episodes and credits. So my guess, the thing that I thought was so interesting is that moment of him at the computer, seeing how it's been designed and knowing like, oh no, we'll never know if this is really the case, that this is what killed her because I've thought her out. And then the aha, like, and the sense of it being like, oh my gosh, at the very last possible moment, they chilled it on ice and sent it to the lab to get looked at. And then you kind of don't want to, on a storytelling part, you don't want to start answering questions the audience isn't asking by like having them in bunny suits, having them in the such a high level of PPE that the audience is like, wait a minute, what's going like is this going to come back later in the season, or
right? I also think making the agent unknown serves a dual purpose or dual use, to use biodefense terminology. One, from a storytelling perspective, it gives you a lot of freedom to do what you want with the agent, which I think is important and incredible to do. If you look at something like this versus something like The Rock with Nicolas Cage and Sean Connery, they specifically name it as VX. Great movie. I love that movie. That is not what VX looks like. That is not what it does.
Wait, it's not fluorescent green?
And conveniently in a ball, right? Doesn't it come in a ball?
Yeah, it does not come in a ball.
Really cool.
But really cool, storytelling devices. Had they not named it as VX, there'd be no problem there. So I think, from that perspective, it's really cool. And then also, just from a realism perspective, a lot of the times we're not going to know what it is. Attribution for chem and bio and everything in between, like toxins and things like that, is, it's not 100%. And
you don't necessarily start with something labeled conveniently for you. It goes exactly this way, the way it did in this episode.
Exactly. So I think that was a super strong point of the episode.
The only thing I thought was missing on this point is that even in the 90s, no matter how much NCIS would not have wanted to do it, they would have had to call the FBI and hand over that specimen, and it would have killed Gibbs to do it, or whoever, Mike, I guess in this case, to do it. Not necessarily for this particular story, but I did think it like, they would be so irritated.
I'm sure that happened off screen. We didn't have to see it in the episode.
The episode does show some interagency tension, a little bit, which I think is realistic.
I will share with you guys, when I was talking with the writers, one of the things I said about Gibbs is, like I said, we know he was in Desert Storm. He was a Desert Storm veteran. We were worried about nerve agent use. I took anti-nerve agent pills. We were doing all kinds of stuff. So he would know. And I thought it was important that he not stand there and go, what's a nerve agent? Or I don't understand. Like he would understand probably as much as Ducky would about the idea of a nerve agent and what it could do and how it might be, how it might be used for assassination or to attack a large group of people. I thought that was important, and I think the actor portrayed it just that way. He didn't look shocked and astounded, or even particularly scared. I also think we forget a lot, because we focus so much on the investigatory aspect of NCIS and how great an investigator he is. But he was a gunny. He was a gunnery sergeant, which is not an easy thing to accomplish. He wasn't a private somewhere. He had risen and was considered a subject matter expert on his, in his own right. So I think, again, a gunnery sergeant would be fully aware and understand what a nerve agent was. So I just wanted to throw that in there. I was really impressed. I thought that was realistic, and at the same time have other people going, "What? No, this is weird." But I agree with you. I mean, getting back to the point, JT, I think from an attribution perspective, this is how it's going to start, and this is the data that people are actually going to have. Whatever Ducky was able to get before everything warmed up is it, and that would actually be the start of yet another investigation, whether it's NCIS or the FBI or Naval Intel, if it gets handed off to Naval Intel. This is the beginning. So it's so important that they do the best they can with what they have, but this is all they're going to have. I thought it was really realistic.
Yeah, and I completely agree. And I think showing that realism helps to correct a lot of, incorrect perceptions of responses that we have to some of these events or threats.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to be like the wildfire tiger team in the Andromeda strain. It's not those aren't the capabilities we have. We don't have a wildfire lab. So I think, portraying that I know of. Yeah, there might be one. Fingers crossed.
You got to hope they're calling it wildfire too.
Oh yeah, they have to. There's no choice. They're locked into that way. Yeah. Along these lines, though, Patrick, especially given your experience as a cinematographer, I'm curious for your thoughts about how to depict this kind of like a biological threat or a chemical threat on screen, because it is invisible. Nuclear weapons, you have a nice mushroom cloud that you can show a shot of on screen or something like that. With bio, I feel like it's a lot harder to elicit that fear out of the viewer. And I also feel like that kind of does translate into real life, where people are probably more afraid of nukes than they are of bio because they can't see the bio threat necessarily. So I am kind of curious, just for, like how you would deal with that cinematographic, if that's a word. Challenge, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny that you mentioned The Rock, because it kind of the only thing you have to show anyone is a prop. Like for this episode, that prop is at the very end when they arrest the person who did this, right? The killer. And there were a lot of conversations about what that prop should look like, and because if a fan freeze frames on that image, we want them to see that we put the effort in, and we, it matter. Those little details matter to us. So we went back and forth, and I pitched the idea of almost like a clear poker chip case, but more secured, and a real definitive part A and part B and different time test tubes. And I mean, the amount of conversations and discussion and looking at different things for this thing that is on screen for an end montage in like 2 shots is the core of filmmaking.
But it's so important. And I've heard about it.
We do all
we all do pause, and we're looking, also looking around in the background to see what's there. Because we've also seen the opposite, where the cup of coffee sitting in the Game of Thrones shots, and like you don't want that. And I think especially for folks from our background or whatever background, it is actually kind of exciting to do the pause and then to see how far do they go with this? Is it right? Or do they just go down to CVS and get something and it just looks weird, but it was perfect for 2 seconds. And I think it also conveys that you care. Yeah. Somebody cared enough to say, okay, let's just do it. Let's do it right.
Yeah. I mean, it's also, it's the right versus what reads quickly to an audience too. And if you, and trusting yourself as that audience, as the director, you're always kind of putting things through your own viewership I say filmmaking is very strange because you are making the art, but you're also making the museum that the art is displayed in. So you have to be the architect, the artist, and the audience all at the same time, out of order and under pressure of like, you have to get this much work done by this amount of time. Otherwise we can't afford to do it. I think the other thing to think about in portraying, I really loved that first, I think it's the first episode of This Is Us, right? Where, and I haven't listened to that episode yet, but
The Last of Us.
The Last of Us. Sorry, yeah, sorry. This is a very different show. Very different. But when you establish a character as a leading expert, and a lot of the good zombie movies do this too, where like the leading expert's like, oh, we're in trouble, and that's the only thing you can do in something that you can't see until it starts affecting people, is to properly establish someone as an expert. And there's no better way than to have a military might show up at their door in the middle of the night and haul them out of their house and take them somewhere secure and show them a body and then be like, oh, well, I want to go say goodbye to my family now. It was nice knowing you, planet Earth. I think that's because you're right. It's a tricky thing to portray. It's different than someone pulling a gun in a room and pointing it at someone. I
mean, I imagine there's you're leaning a lot more on the acting ability of those who are essentially portraying the symptoms of the biological agent. I mean, obviously there's some makeup work, some VFX that you could theoretically use to show visible symptoms, but I'm thinking about the Omega Man in particular, people, asphyxiating in the streets and dying. The acting was not, let's say, A+ back in the 70s. But, I think that you're kind of hoping and counting on the performance to help sell the threat because it is invisible there. And I wonder how you talk to the actors ahead of time when you're talking about that sort of thing.
Well, a lot of times it might be a little thing about just taking the time. The trickiest thing about, I mean, I don't even know what the trickiest number one thing about acting is. It's a ridiculously insane craft. And then to do it surrounded by a bunch of people with a bunch of equipment in a room that doesn't really exist. It's film acting is so different than even theater. But the most common note that I have found has been the most helpful is just listen to the other person. Like if I see you listening to someone explaining something to you and really taking it in instead of waiting to say your line, now you're me, right? You're the audience. And I don't say all that other part, like you can overdirect in a heartbeat, and I've been known to do it. So like to just say, don't forget to let that land, and you don't know what you're going to say right away. I'm happy to see you think of it and then say it, because so many actors for so long have been told to say things just faster and louder, right? Like just, because you will oftentimes you'll cut scenes much quicker just to feel the engine of the problem driving the show. But it's always helpful to have people inside these moments and have them stretch out the way they really do. I don't know what I'm going to say next, so I have to think of it, and it's good to see that in an actor's performance. And then you just hope that you haven't said that to someone who's going to be there and go, like just do it so long. You're like, no, I shouldn't have told them that.
Well, I will say, and we just learned this recently, human comprehension occurs in the pauses. Both before and after someone has said something or they've heard something. So it makes sense from that way too. If you're going to direct an episode, if you're going to have actors acting an episode, it can't be, Sorkin's lines one after another.
It's hilarious.
Staccato.
I was thinking of Sorkin as well.
Well, but even he forces the pause in there too.
He does, yeah.
So for this episode, you kind of needed the pauses because you need the audience to participate and color in the background a little bit too for themselves, because it would have to have been a 10-hour episode for you to get in every little scientific piece and all the ways it would look and all the stuff we'd be looking at under a microscope and all the tests and all the diagnostics and all. It's just not possible. So it's necessary. I would say it's absolutely necessary for somebody to, if in real life you need it for comprehension, then while you're watching the show, you need it too.
It also makes it more human and believable for the actors to take those pauses and to not, I love Sorkin and his work, but I will say that is one thing that does sometimes take me out of it, is the conversations don't feel realistic.
Yeah.
I love the way the conversation, like it's its own art form. But sometimes they just don't feel as realistic or human.
And I think he typically likes enjoying portraying really intelligent people. And so
yes.
I think there is that thing that you were just talking about where us as the audience are like, wow, they're putting this together so quickly. They must be really smart. And I think Mamet likes portraying, because that's another person I think of in that, rapid fire thing, but he likes portraying all like street smart people. Ricky Jay is in all those movies because he's in on the con, and that's what makes those movies so great.
Well, it's interesting. I think it's really an interesting thing, and maybe we should add it. We should be thinking about it when we're rating our shows on the credibility side. I think a show that doesn't have those pauses and is just sort of spitting out all the information at you, and the first 10 minutes of the movie might subtract from the credibility score of it.
Unless they've made it clear that those individuals are over-caffeinated up front. If they do, then we're fine.
Which I'm sure a lot of people in the biodefense field are.
Yes.
I remember the West Wing episode where you see him, the character of Josh, like take the old grounds out of the garbage can and put them back in the coffee maker.
I remember that
He's
episode.
out of fresh coffee. Yeah.
But that was completely unrealistic. It's the White House. He could have just gone down to the cafe or something.
He can get some at the commissary before he starts work, for sure, right?
Go on.
One other thing I wanted to touch on a little bit was knowing that this is set in the 90s, in 1991, I thought it was very interesting that a chemical weapon was used over a biological. And it seems like the reason might be, and I could be wrong, like the Chemical Weapons Convention was being negotiated in the 90s and was officially signed on, I think, in 1993. So this would have been a time where something like this would have slipped through the cracks in terms of the Chemical Weapons Convention. So I thought that was really cool. Like the time frame adds.
Cool
I don't know if it's coincidental. I don't know if it's cool. I just wanted to ask if it was coincidental or if that was intentional, because it lines up perfectly. I mean,
well, I mean, at least it's an explanation for why no character said, this is not in accordance with the Chemical Weapons Convention.
Yeah. So I just thought that was really cool that it lined up that way.
I mean, for me, I had no idea until just now. That I would not put it past Margarita or Gina or David for doing that research or knowing it somehow in the research. It's really interesting when you're writing anything. The quickest way to make your script better is to do the research, because the research will throw you a wrench that if you want to keep your character smart, they've now got to navigate around, or you've got to figure out a way to abide by the research and still make it dramatic.
And in some cases, that can result in a superior product at the end of the day. Tackling those challenges, it might make for characters taking actions that are more complex and impressive to the audience. At least that's how I felt. I mean, I typically, when I watch the content for this podcast, I'm constantly trying to find ways to poke holes in in what I'm watching. And I got to say, I was watching this episode, and there at no point was I saying that can't happen. Yeah, that's completely unrealistic. That not in a million years. So I do appreciate that there was some thought given to the execution of the threat. The way that it was, and I appreciate that. I appreciate when people take a minute to think about it.
Yeah,
you can, in my role, even as a cinematographer, you can run across in any procedural season. The thing about a procedural TV show, any TV show typically, but especially a procedural, especially one that has more than 8 or 10 episodes a season, is you are on the freight train, and I always imagine the writers are in the caboose, like their fingers on fire on a keyboard, because you're sending track through the train to lay in front of it before it goes off the rails. So there are these moments where you might be like, hey, I don't think this makes any sense, and it's like, too bad, like we're shooting it tomorrow, or we're, like you don't know what the writer's room has gone around or not. So I do feel like the sooner you can start be breaking stories and asking the questions of experts like yourselves, the better off you're going to be. But sometimes things catch up to you.
Do you think that in some cases where, I know we've watched movies where things were completely off base, scientifically speaking, and maybe they did have a consultant even, but they just weren't listened to as much.
They weren't listening, or
Is that like a time constraint, you think, or not a priority constraint? Where sometimes some films or shows will just either hire a consultant and then not listen to them, or not even hire one in the first place.
I think the ways a film style story can get screwed up are innumerable. It's it's such an interesting art form. I've worked with, as a cinematographer, I've worked with directors where I've been like, I think painting would be better for you, because the 50 people here helping you tell your story, who you are constantly ignoring, seem to be getting in your way, instead of, there's a way to approach. I saw a screening of Frankenstein recently, and Guillermo del Toro was there to answer questions. And at a certain point, because the movie is so particularly his style in every way, but that's a movie with at least 100 people on set, right? Because it's huge. And he's like, well, it's a military operation of joy. Like, he's trying to get on set the vibe of, these are the guardrails, this is what I want the story to be, but please bring me your best version of this story. And I always say on set, like, no is an answer. I'll go to my cinematographer, having been one, and say, hey, can you shoot these 2 shots at the same time? And please feel free to say no, because that's an answer, and we can move on from that answer. Like, I don't need to be right. I just need to know if we can do it or not. But I think the other thing that happens, the weird thing that happens on bigger budget shows that have a lot of time, I would imagine some of the features you're talking about, is they might have gone through 4 drafts and 3 directors before it got to the screen. And so some great idea from the previous administration gets ignored because it's the previous administration,
Similar to
politics.
Yes.
As soon as I said previous administration, I realized
who you were talking to.
Hit close to home.
Sorry.
But you're not wrong.
You're not wrong.
Sometimes it's just, if it's affiliated with a different name, it's not considered. So,
and I think there's even been shows or TV or movies that we've watched where we've said that it seems like this went through a lot of hands, because there's a lot of ideas in here. Some of them are kind of disconnected. Or not explained super well, but sometimes, you can tell, like, this went through a lot of hands. It was not the fault of any one person necessarily in particular. It was just the bureaucratic process of
and now you're getting a compilation of compromises. I remember when I saw Alien 3, I was walking home by myself from the theater, and I was like, well, Fincher's a fantastic director.
You just so confused.
So many writers in that opening credits sequence. I know what happened.
Yeah, I think that film is a perfect example of just how, that kind of changing of hands can have an impact on the film at the end of the day. Because I had the same thoughts coming out of that film, knowing Fincher's awesome, this cast is awesome. Yeah, what happened?
Then you look at how many writers there are on the credits.
Exactly.
You're like, oh, that's what happened.
Exactly.
And then you wait 10 years later, and then the documentary that tells all comes out.
Yep.
Well, I hope that Patrick gets to direct an episode that uses an actual biological agent in the future, and that he will call us for our input on that. No, I have to say, I thought this was very interesting from a biodefense perspective. And I think it's useful. I don't think we talk about it enough, that the American, the public, American and otherwise, actually gets a lot of information and their understanding from television shows. Yes. They're not getting it from even the medical correspondents. They're not necessarily even going to the internet. They're watching this, and now this is what they know. nerve agents or whatever. So I think it's important to the extent that you can, to stay true to the truth, and to leave it open ended the way it did. I thought it was good.
Yeah.
Like, we don't really. I mean, yeah, we figured out who did it, but we kind of. We have the whole other backstory that's still not there. We don't know for sure why did that company get into this in the first place, and what was the pressure on them, and who's behind it and who's behind that. I thought that was really quite interesting and better done than some of the other things where it's just all neatly tied up, nothing.
Yeah,
no more,
no
nothing else.
left.
There's nothing else. There's no context. Just one and done, and so we move on.
Yeah, no, bio is anything but neat and tidy when we talk about biological threats, biodefense. Job's never done.
Yeah, and Asha, I think you make a good point there about the public being interested in this, because it does keep popping up over and over and over again in film, in TV, and I know you and I think that we were both kind of inspired by films when we were children. As far as we can remember. For you, I think it was Omega Man, right? And for me, it was The Rock.
And for me, it was West Wing, to be very fair. Still a perfect television show.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Amazing. One other question, actually, Patrick, that I had is, what are some of your favorite films or TV shows that have to do with bio?
Oh, that's a
Because I know we were
one.
talking about The Thing. We talked about the Andromeda Strain a bit.
The book The Andromeda Strain was a huge impact on me, and it's really funny. I don't even know if it made the final cut, but like the documents that they find on this computer, I said I want diagrams of the molecular structure, and they brought back samples that were accurate to the 90s. I'm like, no, they should be like 70s typewriter, like I remember from the book The Andromeda Strain when I read it. That'll, even though it's incorrect, we think of the 90s as being so long ago. I think it'll be okay to see on a computer a very flattened out, because the accurate thing would be like three-dimensional molecular models. And like, no, I think it's kind of like, Star Wars looks like the future because it looks like the past kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I was like, no, let's make it really flat. So that's another one of those. I mean, I don't even know if an image from that conversation hit the screen in the final cut, but it's just those things you drag from your own life. And so for me, reading that book was really fantastic. And then when I finally saw it in movie form, I thought that was really wonderful. So that's one of my favorites. I also think I'm a fan of zombie movies. I was a cinematographer of a really ridiculous one called the remake of Day of the Dead, which Ving Rhames is in, and he eats his own eyeball
We're gonna have to add that.
when he turns into a zombie. But I thought, and I have to listen. I mean, this is an ad to listen to your podcast because I saw that it's in there. Like 28 Days Later is smart because you get the beginning of the disaster twice.
Yeah.
And that's the best part of most of those movies, that sense of dread and the thing getting out of the bottle and escaping into the community is terrifying. And that's, we often go to movies to see the things we don't want to talk or think about. And I thought they were so smart to do it twice, right? You see it happen and then you see him experience the aftermath. So you get the reveal twice. So those two are up there. And that movie is so well made.
By the way, I believe there was in fact an image of the strain on the computer at the end of your episode. I think it made it there, and I think it's really cool that you insisted on having it be something older, because I could see, 1991. You're not necessarily guaranteed to have the most up-to-date schematics for something,
right?
Especially if it's an illegal activity,
right? Yeah,
well, that was my thinking too. It's like they didn't hire a graphic designer to help them with the model. They just needed the information down.
Yeah,
and they did it in Microsoft Word.
Yeah, no, that was very well thought out there. Really
I think it was Word Perfect back in the day.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Corel Word Perfect, right?
Yeah.
Corel. Good old Corel.
The first time I met John Sayles while working in for Sarah Green, one of his producers, I had to teach him how to use MS-DOS and Word to write scripts, because he was switching from a typewriter to a computer. So that's a very fond section of time in my mind.
And again, not that long ago.
No.
It really
right,
isn't
shockingly
that long
not that long ago.
Pentagon still uses DOS for logistics.
Let's not talk about that.
That sounds like a really good topic
government
to keep
systems.
going on.
Okay, JT, shall we
Okay.
rate it?
We can if you want to.
Let's go ahead and rate it.
I can leave if you want to do it without me here.
No. You can. You need to. You should weigh in if you can,
Oh boy.
or you can recuse yourself.
I will recuse myself now because
Well, you have
anything
to
other than top marks.
You have to recuse yourself on the rating
Direction
for the
category.
direction.
Yeah.
Okay, so then the first category would be relevance to commission recommendations. I think there was a lot with respect to attribution and things like that we kind of talk about maintaining samples and things like that. So I think there's a lot there. What other topics did you guys pick up on, or recommendation ideas?
Something we talk about very frequently is at what stage in a criminal investigation when you realize that it is a CBRNE threat, and how do you realize it? And then, talking about that handoff, like we discussed, that probably happened off screen afterwards, bringing in the Bureau to get a sample of it so they can go off and try to do the attribution piece. That's still something, we talk about a lot, that, these investigations are not automatically deemed to be a biological threat investigation until you realize there's a biological threat. So that, I think, is quite pertinent to the piece.
Yeah, I think that was really accurate, the idea that you don't know what threat you're dealing with at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I thought that was just brilliantly executed.
So I agree. I think the episode addresses our biological attribution or just attribution recommendations. I thought it addressed the need for inter and intra-agency partnerships. There's this whole question at the beginning, why is Ducky there? Well, we need to evaluate whether you need your own ME office. We don't want an ME office. That wasn't just about, or maybe we do, but we're not sure, and all of that stuff. I know from working with law enforcement that why do we need an MD sitting in the middle of our space? That's realistic, and we do talk about interagency, interprofession partnerships. There's no way to address biological threats without that. And it's hard. It's hard for the public health and healthcare community to see law enforcement walk in, or the intel community or whatever. So I thought it addressed that pretty well too. I thought it did a good job of addressing our recommendations on the Department of Defense, Department of War, I guess now. What's DOD's policy? Do we need a review of that policy? Some of it seemed like it was from, even the 60s in this episode. There were little glimmers of that in the writing. So it addressed that recommendation. I think it did a good enough job of implying that, soon we're going to be talking about medical countermeasures and whether we're dying and all of that. We addressed that too. So I would give it a 5. JT. I thought that they did a pretty good job of, not that they knew about our recommendations, but they did address it.
Yeah, which shows how important they are if other people are thinking about them in this context. So I think a 5 is a good score.
I agree with that.
Scientific accuracy would be the next category. Again, I think this one did very well with, the plausibility of things. So I would definitely give it higher marks than we've probably given some of the previous ones. Mm-hmm. I think part of the reason the scientific accuracy is better is because it was simpler and because there was ambiguity about what it was. Mm-hmm. And that's also realistic, so I think it is, I would give it high marks for this. I would say a 4 or a 5. I'm just not sure about the porcelain tooth.
Yeah, I can't give it a 5 on
That's such
the
a question,
porcelain.
right? Like you can't not address well, would it?
It might.
I took a half point off for the porcelain.
Okay.
Not because it was wrong, but because I wasn't 100% sure, and you're not 100% sure that.
But I am going to give a half point back in the next category for the imagination, because I do think it is imaginative.
Well, Asha, let me ask you before you say your rating here. Do you think that the episode accurately reflected the input that you offered up to the writers?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. even on
Yeah, you're the technical consultant.
what I thought Gibbs would do. I do. I think I could tell that they seem to have listened. Of course, I don't know what it was like before they talked to me. It might have been that way the entire time, but I didn't feel like I was. It was ignored. The other part of this accuracy piece for me was what was going on with the medical examiner. I'm always looking to see, are they wearing gloves, are they not? Are they, randomly cutting open the thigh when they're really trying to get at the heart, that kind of silly stuff. And I think that was spot on. I didn't find any inaccuracies there in terms of how the medical professionals would conduct themselves. And I thought, in terms of law enforcement and what they do, preservation of the body is, for evidence is important, but there's a scientific reason that has to happen too, and they know that. It's not just, hey, we need to, box up the body and stick it somewhere because we need the evidence. They know that there are tests, there's specimens to be gotten, etc. And so I thought that they adhered to that as well.
Okay, so you think a 4 or a 4 or 5?
I gave it a 4 or 5.
Okay.
But
you're the technical expert consultant on it, so we're going with yours.
You know the technical stuff too. I a 4 or a 4 or 5, but okay. I'm having difficulty finding something to drive it down.
Yeah. Okay. 4 or 5 then.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's fine. I agree with JT's assessment. I think for me, what usually drives down this category is asserting something that is just completely out there or factually incorrect, and leaving the ambiguity kind of helps the episode to a certain extent, because first of all, it allows the viewer to fill in with their imagination, which I think is a very strong goal of all filmmaking and television. It's allow us to use the theater of the mind to fill in some of the gaps. I will say it's going to haunt me for at least a week or two about what that company was trying to do with that nerve agent. But that's okay. That's my problem, not your problem, Patrick.
Well, they were obviously trying to sell it to somebody. The question was, did somebody ask them for it?
But if it's a profitable seed company, why do you need to sell nerve agents?
There's a whole other story about that owner's drug problem. There's a ad somewhere in there where. Well, maybe I'm with you. Why is he doing all that?
Maybe they'll bring you back in season 3 to do the follow-up episode on his motives and his partners overseas.
I will say, for a seed or pesticide company working on a nerve agent does line up, because pesticides are smaller scale nerve agents,
as they said in the episode, which again I also appreciated.
Yeah, so I thought that was again just a super great, super great call out on that.
So I would go 4 or 5 on this.
Yeah. Okay, sounds good. And then the next category, which I alluded to, is scenario development, and we also kind of call this, Patrick, success of the imagination or creativity.
Oh, cool.
Because we often in biodefense and preparedness see failures of the imagination, and in determining what people can expect or think about. For example, during COVID, no one thought asymptomatic transmission was going to happen because a failure of the imagination.
Because it had never happened before, right? Or it had happened infrequently before.
Exactly. So how much does the scenario actually push those boundaries a little bit forward? I think, so again, like I said, the porcelain tooth, I think success of the imagination is true there. And the cryopreservation piece, I thought was really creative from a forensics angle. I think we often see these, biochem things represented in television, but we don't often see the investigation side. So I thought that was a really strong point, and I think they did it very creatively.
Yeah, I think that was well done. This isn't directly related necessarily to bio scenario development, but I did appreciate how much of the action and the acting took place in that refrigerated space. You're kind of keeping the victim and therefore the threat front and center. At least the viewer realizes that at the end of the episode. But also, I just appreciated that you had such an enclosed space for such intimate moments between Ducky and each of the members of NIS. And so just from someone who appreciates and enjoys television, I love the blocking and the development there. And to have him have his, kind of his, I don't know if it was a realization, but at least uttering his insecurities in that moment before he finds the threat in that space was really cool. So I did appreciate that setup.
Look, I thought it was really creative. I I certainly had never seen anything involving a tooth before. I thought that was creative. We have seen bodies in freezers before, but usually it's because somebody goes and stuffs them into a freezer or they get stuck in the freezer. I thought it was really creative. It was a very original idea to have her say to herself, I'm dying. I'm going to die quickly.
Yeah.
I want to try and preserve the evidence. Somebody might be able to figure this out. I'm going to put myself into a freezer. I thought that was really creative and smart.
Yeah,
you know,
and original too, I think.
It's a person who would know that too.
Right.
You know, to do that for herself.
Yeah, so I think I would give it high marks for this. Patrick, what do you think?
Well, as a director, when you read the script and a whole bunch of it's going to take place in a space that you know should be like 8 by 20.
Yeah.
And then when you build it on set, you cheat and make it 10 by 20 so to give yourself 2 whole extra feet. It's terrifying because you're like, oh my gosh, I have to figure out, and especially to make those intimate moments land. One of the big tricky parts was that the scene with Kyle, Frank's, the character of Frank's, who's notoriously doesn't open up to people and yells first and asks questions later. They're having that, there needs to be room for him to move in the space, and then they have to have this really heart to heart, which makes sense as written, as beautifully written, where he would not do that if he was looking at Ducky, but because he's not looking, because he's treating the head wound, like that helps him open up. But they're doing it all next to a body. And you have to have the audience forget that the body is there. And shout out to Margarita, when she was next to me, she pointed that out, because in one of our shots, you could see, you know, like it was a nice 2-shot, and the cool frame had like the feet of the body in it. And she was like, and I was like, oh, yeah. But yeah, it's really tricky and it's a lot of work. Big shout out to the crew and the assistant director and the cinematographer, Kia and Kevin, to help me figure out, because then you also have to schedule the work in there, and it's like, okay, we're going to pull this wall, and then I have to figure out the blocking in such a way that we can knock out. I think we shot everything inside that container in a day and 2/3 or something. It wasn't
Wow.
not a lot of time. You have 8 days to shoot the whole episode, so and also to build the right amount of time so the actors can give you those performances, because they're not just expository or you know, they're emotional performances, and you have to believe them as 3-dimensional. So I'm going to take a recording. I'm going to take a recording of you, Rob, saying that, because it's I'm going to carry it around like a resume.
Please, by all means.
So what's your self-rating then for this in terms of creativity?
I don't, you know, it's funny. I always feel like the day I drive home and think like nailed it is also the day I should quit. Like there's always some regret either to or from the set. Like a lot of times I'll be driving in the next morning and have the perfect shot come into my mind of a scene that I've been thinking about for weeks and that we shot yesterday. And then suddenly my brain's like, well, you should have done this.
You should have done.
So I have to recuse
You're
myself.
Gonna recuse?
You know.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would give it I'll give it a 4 or 5 again.
What do you think, Rob?
I was going to say 4, but if you guys want to do 4 or 5, we can do that.
You don't have to be overly influenced by me. What do you think, JT?
Well, I'm not going to give it a 4.25.
No, we don't do quarter. We don't do quarter points.
I think I would go with the 4 or 5.
Okay.
Because I do appreciate the ambiguity of the agent, especially. I think that is something that you don't see that often. It's
almost refreshing compared to a lot of things that we've been watching recently. It feels like a lot of folks go kind of bend over backwards and are trying to hammer home like this is exactly what they're dealing with. And sometimes it pays off if they've done their homework, but sometimes it really backfires.
Right. Like, I mean, I know we keep going back to The Thing, but you don't ever know what that thing is.
Yeah.
That's why it's called The Thing.
Yeah.
And that, you know, that kind of ambiguity, I think, helps a lot with success of the imagination.
As much as I do love The Thing, there was that one scene with Wilford Brimley where he's like, the computer is estimating how long it'll take for the whole world to be infected. So
that's one of the...
For me, it's the pencil, right? He puts the pencil in his mouth at a certain point, right? That he's like tapping the body. Or,
yeah.
Am I remembering that right?
Yeah. I mean, even classics have their faults.
They do.
Yeah. I will say, too, with nerve agents, when you see that oftentimes in movies and TV shows, a lot of the time it's an assassination attempt or a successful assassination, and you do wind up starting with so-and-so was stabbed with such and such. Look, it's a nerve agent, and that's where you start, whereas this episode didn't start with that. It kind of brought you into it later.
And I appreciated that they just assumed that it was strangulation upon seeing the bloodshot eyes, because why would you think it's a nerve agent? I mean,
No, most law enforcement, first responders, even people in the ER, even today, won't recognize that will never be their first.
Yeah, you need a specific
it's not diagnostic,
symptom.
right?
Yeah,
correct.
I mean, if that's what you're doing, if you're trying to diagnose somebody on the basis of physical, they didn't have a chance yet to even extract
visual
a criminal,
examination.
A blood sample or a other clinical sample. What else are they going with? And why would you go from eyes and maybe some bruising directly to nerve agent?
Exactly.
You never would. So I think that was good.
Okay. 4 or 5.
4 or 5. Okay, next category, entertainment value. I will say, as someone who has not watched NCIS in the past and didn't have any attachment to this whatsoever, I thought it was extremely entertaining and actually did make me want to watch more of the show. So I think that is...
high praise, Patrick.
Yeah.
That's good.
I actually would second that too. I inevitably saw, an episode here and there of the original NCIS show, because I don't know if you could be near a television for a certain period of time in the 2000s and 2010s and not accidentally watch an episode. But having not seen any other episode of NCIS Origins, I did appreciate this one in particular. I gotta be honest, I don't know why, but I was always confused why Ducky was calling him Jethro throughout the original series. Mm-hmm. And the fact that this specific episode kind of answers that, and it actually kind of meant something to me, and I wasn't expecting it to until I saw that moment. So I agree with you. It was entertaining, and it's something that I certainly would like to kind of check out a little bit more and see, how the cast handles other cases.
Yeah.
Hopefully as equally realistic and dedicated to science as this one was.
Yeah, so I go ahead.
I accept. I wish I could take any credit for it, but again, it's Margarita, Gina, and David all with the scripts, and I'm just trying not to drop the ball.
Well, but you didn't, and that's part of it, right? So,
yeah.
As I said, sort of at the beginning, I would give it a 5. But for a lot of reasons. For me, yes, there's the television show, this episode. Then there's the fact that I, unlike Rob and JT, have seen so many of those. I've probably seen all of those episodes. So there's that, and I've seen some of the others, in Louisiana and wherever else. Then the thing with David McCallum, right? Had that been done wrong or badly or with too little emphasis, it would definitely have made it far less entertaining. I would just not have. It would have been the opposite of entertaining. Not necessarily boring, but upsetting. Like I said, so I give it a 5.
Okay. Yeah, I think a 5 as well.
Yeah, I think that's warranted.
Yeah. Okay. Then the next category is government policy. This is always a tricky one because it has nothing to do with how you wrote it or directed it or anything like that. It's pretty much all about what the government did in the fiction.
Yeah. I mean, there's always room for improvement, right? Like you can't, I don't know if I would say government policy was a 5 here, but only because,
But I will say, highlighting NCIS and NIS at that time. And
well, their policy,
cool.
I think, was good, right?
Yeah.
But somebody's government policy fell apart in terms of regulation of what was going on with that company.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And even in the 90s, we were not letting people just run willy-nilly doing whatever they want to.
With chemicals.
An actual person that should have been going into that facility to look at everything that was going on. And a good assessor would have noticed a line of stuff that's not doing what it's supposed to do. And plenty of people were and are aware of what a nerve agent line would look like. So
there's certain kinds of equipment that you'll have if you're trying to make large batches versus pesticide level batches, which
plus
is
the protection.
Yeah,
it makes sense in this episode that everybody wasn't running around in PPE at any point, but not in that facility. Yeah. And somebody would have noticed that. Why do you have blue suits from here to the end of that gymnasium? So it's clear something fell apart there. And I assume that the government policy was we don't really need to look at these things that much. So at the time, or they didn't have enough people to go and inspect. Either way, it's bad. So I will give it a 3.5.
Yeah, I think that sounds about right to me.
Yeah. Okay. I think a 3.5. A 3.5 sounds good. I was going to say 3, but after thinking about it a little bit, I'm going to give it the extra half point for the...
Was there something specific that brought you to a 3?
No, nothing specific. The reason I elevated it to a 3.5 was because of the connection to the Chemical Weapons Convention. Because that was pretty cool. I was shocked when I looked it up and I was like, oh, these are the same dates.
Yeah.
So I thought that was cool. So I think 3.5 is good. So our next category is portrayal by the actors. I don't think there was no complaints on my end. Patrick, any complaints on any of the actors that you want to call out publicly?
I can say with no level of BS that this cast is a really wonderful cast to work with. They feel like a team off and on camera, and that's really I hope the show runs for a long time, because that's a really special thing to kind of grab in a bottle, where you can tell the cast likes hanging out with each other, and then they feel like a family on screen. So you want that, like, there's the push and pull, and as written they're going to annoy each other, but in the end they would always look out for each other, and I feel like the cast is like that in real life. I've been ridiculously lucky in my career with the actors I've gotten to work with. From Bosch to Body of Proof, like Cold Case, I've worked with really, really great actors. So that's been lucky.
5.
I mean, the only comment I would have is I wasn't entirely sure the dog was depressed.
I was just going to say the same thing.
There's this thing I heard just the other day, that when they hire like dogs to portray wolves, they often have to CG their tails, because dogs are so happy to do what they're being asked that their tails are wagging all the time. So that, like, when the dog's supposed to be growling and being angry, they often have to nowadays, like, not make it look like they're happy and want to go play.
But Patrick, okay, I have to ask you because you saw the thing.
Yeah.
The dogs in the thing, we were really freaked out by those dogs. That one in particular was so...
It was like its own character. It was, Was that a cinematography thing? Like,
it's editing.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting. Like, you have a great director in charge and an amazing cinematographer who goes on to shoot some small movies like Back to the Future, and so they could use several dogs. Like sometimes, I don't know if they did on the thing, but sometimes if you have a lot of work with animals, you'll just hire several of them, and in one scene you could train 4 dogs to do different beats to that scene. That's not the case on Origins. That they have one hero dog that plays Gary Callahan. But also I know that visual effects artists, because there's certainly some parts, and you can kind of tell where it's a puppet that then splits open and all those horrible things happen. But I think they did have a relatively realistic dog at some point that wasn't really a dog, that was a model. So I don't know, but I think the shot you're talking about is probably a trainer right next to the lens, and they're just and then the smarts of cutting the right performance to the right reaction, and you're just, as a human being, like, that's not right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So 5 for portrayal by the actors. And then the last category which is grouped together, is direction, production, and writing. In the past, we had split these out.
Yeah, and then we kind of grouped them together because oftentimes one ends up influencing kind of
the others,
the outcome of the others. So if as in this case, you have strong writing and strong direction, then that kind of ends up boosting it. So,
and I think the production value was a lot higher than I thought going into when I went into watching this as it being a television show. It's not something that's like $110 million an episode.
Yeah, I mean, I think some people fairly unfairly sometimes have a certain image in their head of a procedural, right? And I think you can always tell which ones are actually putting care and consideration into the world they're building versus other ones that I'm not going to say are phoning it in, but are clearly not doing that.
Right.
So, and this one obviously falls into the former category in terms of actually, I mean, just the fact that you were thinking through how the schematics for something that you weren't even sure was going to show up on a computer should be. I really appreciate that.
That speaks to a lot, I think, of the care and level of detail that went into this.
Yeah,
and I had a team listening and wanting to help me do it. Like that's the thing. It's like as a director, you're the guest to the show, and so you could pitch something like that and then be like, "Oh yeah, we'll get right on that," and they just do whatever they want. That's not this team at all. Like they're really like, "Oh, what do you?" And I was trying to find like a PDF of the original softcover book that I grew up reading to show them, but then they just showed me samples and you pick it. But and some of those things that we're looking at and fine tuning right up until the day before we're shooting them. Like we had to wait a little bit to get delivery of the case that we were going to show him getting arrested with, and then to get it dressed, and then even I think that morning we were shooting the scene where they go to the law firm. We shot that at the seed facility factory. And so they were setting up the factory and putting in all the set dressing that had all the labels for that in and the props department came to me with the box, and we gave a couple last minute notes the morning we shot that scene. So yeah, it's nice to have a team that cares about all that stuff.
I do have a question. You mentioned that you hadn't seen whether or not the diagram made it into the final version. Have you ever seen this episode? Did you go back and watch it?
I have seen the episode. I just couldn't remember. Because I have very strong memories of the cut I delivered, because that I worked. Yeah. The directors on TV shows get 4 days typically after the episode gets shot, and then there's a couple days you don't do anything, and the editor puts a cut together based on their take, and then you have 4 days working with the editing team to make it the cut that you want to present to the writers, the showrunners, and then they put a cut together, show it to the studio, and notes come back and forth between them and the studio. So I had a memory of that shot because I, of course, put it in my cut because it mattered to me.
Director's cut.
But I couldn't remember. I watch the show when it releases on the day it drops, because I also want to just help the numbers, do my little part. But I'm also so curious to see. Also, just wanting to learn, like if you get invited back, you want to learn and see the things like, oh, I cared about blank, but they don't use that kind of shot in this part of a scene, or different showrunners have different tendencies.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I mean, look, I would give it a 5, and not just because the director is sitting here. I think the writing was excellent.
He's not holding a gun to her head.
I think the writing was excellent. I think the directing was excellent. And production, what's interesting to me about this is you can't, even if you wanted to, even if you had an unlimited budget, you can't go bananas with huge production value, because why would that be the case? This is a very specific thing. There's a crime has taken place.
Right.
This team shows up. They're not going to be doing the Tom Cruise thing and running out of stuff and jumping out of airplanes. And it just, if it had been that way, I would actually have subtracted something, because then how realistic is that? It's not. I think everything that needed to happen with production happened. And there were some other cool things in there too. So I give it a 5.
Yeah, I to be honest, am not. I don't normally gravitate towards procedurals. It's just not, as I've gotten older, it's not my usual cup of tea. But this show in particular kind of surprised me in a positive way, and I think that a lot of that is owed to the actors and the acting. A lot of that, though, is also owed to the writing, the direction, and the production.
Yeah. Okay.
One shout out I'd love to give whenever I get the chances for hair and makeup and the stunt performer who played the victim, because that was also something that we had many meetings about, and then tested things, and like how much, even discussions of like how much frost would be in someone's hairline for how long, that kind of stuff.
Well, I have to say, now that you brought it up, we have seen many things where the makeup is so, first of all, it's so make-uppy that you can tell they've just slathered something on somebody. And then there, you can also see sometimes there's a disagreement. Somebody wants the person to look even more gruesome because it looks better, but scientifically speaking, it just wouldn't be that, big a deal. You just wouldn't see that much. Even in this case, this person is exposed to a nerve agent. Her skin did not melt off of her bones.
Right.
Yeah. But somebody might have wanted to do that. Come on, it would look better. So.
How did you know the very first thing I pitched? No.
You walked in and you said, I want Raiders of the Lost Ark.
That's right.
My face is melting.
Unless the eyeballs fall out of her head.
And into her mouth, apparently, yes. Okay, so a 5. Let's give it a 5.
Yeah. Okay.
Unless you want to give it something else.
No. I'm completely in agreement on the 5. So that gives us a final score of 4.64.
Wow.
Which is probably
very highly rated.
It's very up there. Yeah.
Do we have any comparison? What's our next highest?
Oh, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay.
I think we gave
like I know in
the
drama,
Aliens franchise. Has anybody ever gotten an actual 5 across the board?
I don't think so, because government policy is usually bad.
Government policy is usually,
which we appreciate because it points out real gaps.
Exactly, but no, I think Andromeda was also pretty high.
Andromeda was very high.
Yeah.
Maybe Train to Busan. I don't know. We'll have to go back and
check. What a great movie.
Yeah, that was a great movie.
So
4.6, really good score. Thank you all, for being here, and thank you so much, Patrick.
Yeah, really appreciate you joining us.
For joining us. Really just awesome to get that insight from your perspective on how filmmaking goes when it comes to these kinds of issues and bio issues. It's something we care about a lot, obviously. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah.
Sure.
And before we sign off, I just wanted to give you an opportunity if there's anything that you wanted to say, any final thoughts or anything that you need to pitch or plug.
Based on this episode, I did get hired to come back and direct another episode, which I just finished. So I'm excited that it worked. And
which episode? Can you tell us which episode it was again?
210, episode 210, which I think isn't coming out because of the Olympics. I don't think it comes out till March.
Gotcha.
Okay.
We'll keep an eye out for it.
We'll watch.
Sure. Yeah.
Please do.
Okay. Well, I think, look, thank you so much for joining us. I know, you're as busy as everybody else is, but we really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Oh, it's really fun. And listening to your podcast, because I was so, initially you're like, wait, it's a podcast about what? And then now I got to listen to a bunch of episodes. So.
And Patrick, I have to ask you, and I know this is a podcast and most people are listening, but has anybody told you that you look like you're related to Robert Redford?
Thank you very much. I have gotten that occasionally, and I appreciate it. My parents would be very proud.
And I would like to say that I'm proud of my staff, and my male members of the staff are not rolling their eyes. I think it's true. It's an observation on my part.
Oh, thank you. That's very sweet. I appreciate it. Sure. I need to be thinner, and then I might have a better chance of working with Robert Redford.
Not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, and thank you, Asha and Rob, and thank you for everybody listening, and we hope to see you next time.
All right. Thanks
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.